Many of these Jews were killed, and many of them were expelled, such as Daniel and that whole story of what was going on. But many others were allowed to remain right there in Israel. Okay? Very important. These Jews that remained in Israel and their descendants and other Jews would resettle over the next 500 years. This is, you can read Nehemiah and hear the whole story, and Ezra, and get the whole story about it. They would resettle for the next 500 years, and they rebuilt the nation of Israel, and also the second temple in Jerusalem. It was the exact same temple site we were talking about on Thursday night. So to claim that the Jews just suddenly appeared in this land shortly after the Holocaust is absolutely ridiculous. These people have been here for thousands of years. This is their land. Now listen to me. The fact that people talk about the Palestinian state really shows literally how much they don't really understand this. But where do we get this? We get this from hearing it, like Hitler said, you just repeat a lie. Keep it simple, though. Just keep it real simple. Keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people will believe you. Yeah. Okay? It's like this. If you were raised, let's say you were raised in some obscure area, nobody ever told you any different, your parents taught you that this color is red. So ever since you were a little tiny kid, you've always learned that this is red. And all your life, you're 50 years old, and you finally meet another human being from, a city you just happen to go into, and you look at the person and say, man, I love your red shoes. And they look down at their shoes, and they look at you and say, what are you talking about? These are black shoes. No, I'm talking about those shoes you're wearing right now, those red shoes. You understand how it works. You hear this stuff over and over again, and repetition gets in your head. I want you to listen to this. The Jewish people have the most legitimate birthright and certificate of any nation in the entire world. Listen to this. Every time there's an archaeological dig in Israel, it does nothing but reconfirm the fact that the Jewish people have had a presence in this area for over 3,300 years. The national coins, the pottery, they're digging up cities, the ancient Hebrew text. Every single time it reconfirms, wow, here's another proof. You can't get away from that. Obviously, there's been several people groups that's passed through this land, and it's been that way and will continue to be that way, but it cannot be denied that the Jews have always had a continual presence in the land of Israel for over 3,000 years. No nation other than Israel has ever ruled as a sovereign national entity on this land. It's extended over this entire area before the Arabs and their Islam was even born. Okay? Very important. Let's stick with me. Now, so-called Palestinian state, if this is truly the truth, that they say, well, the Jews stole the land from the Palestinians. How many times have you heard that? You've heard it over and over again. That's what all the arguments, oh, they took our land, they need to give our land back, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know what? If you believe that this is true, then I'm going to ask you a few questions about the country of Palestine. Okay? You can ask this to your friends. Those who believe in the lie of the Palestinian people, let's start off, first of all, can you name for me one Palestinian leader ever before Yasser Arafat? Just one. You see, he's got his finger up there. It's one. Name one. Now that is very interesting, because it never, ever existed before him. So all of a sudden, Yasser Arafat becomes the Palestinian Authority, the leader. But name one before them. Since this is such a big deal, let's really talk about it. If Palestine is really a legitimate nation, then answer these basic questions. Number one, when was the nation of Palestine founded, and by whom was it founded? Number two, what were the borders of this so-called nation of Palestine? Surely it's got to have some borders. What's the borders? Number three, what was its form of government? If you're going to have a nation, you got to have some form of government. What was the form of government? Number four, what was the capital of the nation Palestine? Okay? I mean, that's really simple questions. Number five, what was its major cities? All nations have some major cities. Name me one or two or three. Okay? Number six, what constituted the basis of its economy? Obviously, it's got to have some kind of system there. And number seven, what was the name of its currency? This nation of Palestine everybody's talking about, what's the name of its currency? Okay? Number eight, do you know of a library where one could find any Palestinian literature that was produced before 1967? Number nine, have the Palestinians left behind any type of artifact, such as coins, pottery, cities, houses, or any kind of physical proof from this area that shows that the Palestinians were from this region? And you know what, folks? None of those questions can be answered. That's very simple. But not any of them can ever be answered because there was never a nation of Palestine. Never existed. Now, let me just say something though. You see how stinking deceived people are. The Bible says the devil deceiveth the whole, but how's he doing? He feeds them lies. Now, but this lie has been repeated so often that most people really, truly believe that there was a nation called Palestine. The so-called Palestinian people that are there calling themselves Palestinians today are Arabs. That's all they are. They're just Arabs. They're no different culturally, historically, or ethnically from other. Here I sat for hours and wrote all this stuff and I can't even read it. From other Arabs living in any of the 24 Arab countries which they've immigrated. Now, let me just tell you something that's interesting. Even the leader of the Palestinian movement when it started was Yasser Arafat. He was an Arab Egyptian. Now you got to understand, as Sherlock told us last night, who the Palestinians were, where they got the name. I'll tell you something just kind of verifies that. Look at the title on the newspaper that came out the day that Israel became a nation. Notice what it's called. The what Post? What do they call that same newspaper today? The Jerusalem Post. It's all these people that they're the true Palestinians are the Jews. These are people from Palestine named, and I'll let Sherlock highlight on that because of the details that's around it. This was actually a name that was given to them to mock them as people and to rid them of their heritage. They did that, the Romans did that to absolutely disdain the Jews. Now, with that said, I want you to consider something. In short, the so-called Arab Palestinian people are an artificial, manufactured group with no history, no authenticity as a nation. This whole issue was contrived after the return of the Jews to their land. These Palestinians are descendants of Esau, whose sole purpose for existence is to destroy the Jewish state. This is an ongoing war that goes all the way back to the sibling rivalry with Ishmael, was found mocking and picking on his stepbrother Isaac. And folks, let's just generate some truth here. You know why this all got started? Because a man was having sex with somebody that wasn't his wife. Let me just tell you something. It's real simple. Don't go messing with somebody that's not your husband or wife. I mean, if you take a look at this, there's no doubt where this all started from, and it never has changed. Matter of fact, God gave prophecy about this. Obviously, it's already been touched on, but let's look at it for a second. The angel of the Lord said unto her, talking about to the very woman, Hagar, who became the mother of this generation of people that you and I have to take our shoes off before we get on an airplane because of this. Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And by the way, as Sherlock's made it very clear, there's a covenant that he made with these people, a promise, clearly verified. But the passage goes on to say about the descendants, he will be a wild man. Yes. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Listen, this is prophecy. You can't get around this. The fact of the matter is, God said earlier to Abraham, listen, and notice what he calls him. He says, Abram, this is before his name was changed to Abraham, get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, and from thy father's house unto a what? Land. That I will show thee. I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee, make thy name great. Thou shalt be a blessing. Notice now, and I will bless them that bless thee, curse him that curses thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. You've seen that 100 times. But I want to close tonight with this very interesting example. Norway has quickly become one of the most anti-Semitic nations in the world. And a recent event shows just how true this passage is. What happened, many of you will remember, if you've read up on history or enjoy history, Norway was the area that the Nazis were occupying, and literally every Jew was deported or sent to death camps. Many of them fled, obviously, for their lives. But today, Norway is pretty much back to its old ways. It's become anti-Semitic, and it's very much radical Muslims, and they are, in essence, doing more damage now than ever before. Now, why I'm bringing this out is because the Palestinian president had visited Norway's foreign minister on July the 18th, very important day to remember. And at this news conference, it was made very clear that from the Norway's foreign minister that he wanted Norway, listen to this, quote, to be the first country to recognize the Palestinian state. Talking about this upcoming thing that was going on this week. Now that's not a good place to start. Okay? Well, what ends up happening, if you go back to the 30s, you'll find that it had lots and lots of clear hatred of the Jews. They were obviously very much sided with the Nazis. They were involved in killing the Jews. And this pretty much is where they have gone back to, except now they're more dangerous than they were with the Nazis. Now, why this is important, though, is because of an event that had transpired recently. The foreign minister arrives to a socialist labor youth league summer camp. He arrives onto this island, and he is greeted with the youth making signs talking about